Today, let's dive into a movie called Parasite from 2019. It's full of drama and thrilling moments, so watch out for spoilers. The story shows the Kim family living in a tight, semi-basement apartment in Seoul. Ki-taek, the dad, Chung-suk, the mom, along with their kids, Ki-jung and Ki-woo, fold pizza boxes for little money, trying hard to get by. They do things like using their phones near the bathroom window just to use someone else's Wi-Fi, or opening their windows wide to let in the smoke from bug spray, even though it's bad to breathe it in. One night, Ki-woo's friend Min-huk visits them. He brings a special rock from his grandpa's collection, which is supposed to help them get rich. Min-huk also has a job for Ki-woo. Since he's going to be out of the country, he wants Ki-woo to take his place, tutoring a rich family's daughter. Ki-woo knows English really well because he was in the military and tried to get into university 4 times. Ki-jung is good at using design programs so she can make fake papers that say she's a university student. Her bosses probably won't check them carefully. The wife of his boss is easy to fool, so just having a recommendation from Min-huk should work. Ki-woo dresses up nicely and heads to the rich part of the city with a fake document. When he gets to the Park family's big house, the housekeeper, Guk Moon-gwang, lets him in. Mrs. Park, or Choi Young-gyo, interviews him. She doesn't really look at his papers because she trusts Min-huk's recommendation. She wants to watch Ki-woo teach her daughter Da-hai to see if he's alright. Da-hai is shy and gets a bit scared when Ki-woo grabs her wrist, but he's just trying to help her with her lesson, so she warms up to him. Mrs. Park likes what she sees and decides to hire Ki-woo with good pay. Later, Ki-woo meets the son, Da-song, who likes playing Indians. Ki-woo connects with him over being a former scout. Then, when showing Da-song's art to Ki-woo, Mrs. Park says she needs a new art teacher. Ki-woo suggests his qualified cousin, Jessica, but he's actually talking about his sister. His sister pretends to be Jessica and shows up for an interview after quickly learning about art therapy online. Meanwhile, Ki-woo is teaching Da-hai, who feels a bit jealous of his friendship with the art teacher. Ki-woo tells her he doesn't like her in that way, but they end up kissing anyway. On the other side, Ki-jung talks Mrs. Park into letting her have the first lesson with Da-song by herself. She does a great job because by the end of it, Da-song is acting really well behaved. Ki-jung even points out to Mrs. Park that Da-song's paintings show signs of trauma from something bad that happened in first grade. Mrs. Park thinks her son really needs to start doing art, so she hires Ki-jung with really good pay. On that same day, she meets Mr. Park, the dad. Mr. Park tells his driver, Yoon, to take Ki-jung back home. But Ki-jung didn't want them to see she lives in a not-so-nice place, so she said, "Just drop me at the train station, I'm meeting someone there." On the way to the station, Ki-jung gets a sneaky idea and leaves her panties in the car. Back at home, the Kim family starts to have nicer meals because Ki-jung and her brother are bringing in more money. They're already thinking about what they should do next, while Mr. Park finds some underwear in the car and thinks Yoon is up to no good. He believes Yoon is seeing other people or even doing drugs because who leaves their underwear behind? One day, when Ki-jung is done with her class, Mrs. Park asks her what she thinks of the driver. Ki-jung shares how Yoon tried to take her home instead of dropping her at the station. So, Mrs. Park decides it's time to let Yoon go, but quietly, to avoid any drama. Ki-jung then suggests hiring a more reliable, older driver, hinting at her uncle's old driver. Ki-taek, who had been a chauffeur when he was younger, ends up being the man in the story. He takes Mr. Park for a test drive one day. Mr. Park likes how polite Ki-taek is and how well he knows his way around the city without even using a GPS to find places. Mr. Park loves how smoothly his car is driven, so he quickly decides to hire the driver. However, getting Moon-gwang, the tough and clever housekeeper who has worked there a long time, out of the house is the trickiest part. Ki-woo finds out from Da-hae that Moon-gwang is allergic to peaches, so he and Ki-jung start secretly tossing peach fuzz around her. Moon-gwang feels sick, but doesn't think it's an allergy. She goes to the doctor to check, and Ki-taek uses this chance to sneak a photo of her looking sick. Then, he shows Mrs. Park the photo, pretending he heard Moon-gwang say she has tuberculosis. At their home, Moon-gwang starts coughing because she's allergic, so Ki-taek uses ketchup to make it look like she coughed up blood. Feeling embarrassed about having a sick worker, Mrs. Park asks Ki-taek to keep it a secret from her husband and decides to fire Moon-gwang, making up an excuse. She tells Mr. Park that Moon-gwang quit. This makes Mr. Park start to worry about who will do the cooking and cleaning. Ki-taek then suggests a fancy agency he knows to Mr. Park, saying he can tell his wife it was his idea. There's this agency that's supposed to help families find reliable workers, but it's actually a trick by a family called the Kims. They have a special phone number on their card. Ki-jung, one of them, uses it to act like she's a secretary. When Mrs. Park calls, Ki-jung asks for a bunch of official documents. In the end, Chung-suk, another Kim, gets hired as a housekeeper. Now the whole Kim family works there. Da-song, one of the characters, figures out that everyone has a similar smell. They think it might be their soap at first, but then they realize it's actually the scent of their old, inexpensive apartment. When the Parks go on a camping trip, leaving Chung-suk to look after the house, the entire Kim family decides to spend some time there. They make themselves at home, using all the rooms, eating whatever they find, enjoying the fancy wines, and Ki-woo even sneaks a peek at Da-hai's diary. He's got a plan to propose to her once she gets into university. The Kims are sitting together, dreaming about how cool it would be to marry into a rich family. Outside, there's a big storm going on. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. It's Moon Gwang, the former housekeeper. She says she left something important in the basement because she had to leave fast when she got fired. Chung-suk, trying to keep her family hidden, lets her in, but Moon Gwang takes a really long time in the basement. So, Chung-suk decides to check on her. She finds Moon Gwang struggling to move a cupboard. When they move it together, they find a secret door. It leads to a hidden bunker that the house's original designer, who was also the previous owner, had built. Moon Gwang's husband, Oh Gun-se, has been hiding in a secret place for a long time because he needed to stay away from people who wanted money from him. Moon Gwang, who knew about this secret spot, helped him stay there when the old owner went away and the place was empty, waiting for someone new to come. The new owners, the Parks, didn't know there was this hidden spot. Moon Gwang used to secretly bring food to her husband there, which is why Mr. Park wondered why she always seemed to eat a lot. She decided to visit today, knowing the Parks wouldn't be home. She wanted a private chat with Chung-suk. Her request? Letting her husband stay on, hidden below, even offering to pay for his meals. But Chung-suk wasn't having it. She reached for her phone, about to call the cops. Just then, her own family, trying to eavesdrop, tumbled down the stairs. Moon Gwang quickly uses her phone to record the Kims calling each other family names. Now she and her husband have the upper hand. They threaten to expose the Kims' secret to the Parks unless they follow their orders. Everyone moves upstairs and the Kims have to sit in a corner while Moon Gwang and Gun-se make themselves at home. Moon Gwang got really mad at the Kims for making a big mess in the living room. She said they were acting like pigs. She told them that when she and her husband were alone in the house, they always took good care of everything because the house was designed so nicely. While she was telling them off, the Kims didn't waste any time. They all jumped into action to get the phone from her. Ki-taek tackled Gun-se, Ki-jung used peaches to knock Moon Gwang out, and Ki-woo grabbed the phone to delete a video. Just when they thought they were getting somewhere, the phone in the house rang and made everyone stop and listen. Chung-suk was really surprised when she answered the phone. Mrs. Park was on the line, saying they had to come back earlier than planned. Their camping trip was ruined because of a big storm. Now Mrs. Park needed Chung-suk to get dinner ready for them. Right after the call, the whole family springs into action. Chung-suk starts to cook, Ki-taek ties up Gun-se in the basement, Ki-jung hides the mess, and after taking and knocked out Moon Gwang to the basement, Ki-woo rushes upstairs with the diary. Just then, the Parks come back. Ki-woo sneaks under Da-hai's bed and Ki-jung rolls under the table. Moon Gwang wakes up, tries to get away, but Chung-suk shoves her down to the basement where she hits her head. Ki-taek drags her to her husband, who's tapping on light switches, trying to send a Morse code message, hoping Da-song will notice it. But Ki-taek doesn't buy it, ties him up, and leaves. Meanwhile, Mrs. Park tells Chung-suk at dinner about Da-song's scary moment in first grade. He tried to get his birthday cake at night and saw what he thought was a ghost from the basement. It was actually Gun-se. It scared him so much he started shaking and foaming at the mouth. That's why he's been in therapy, and they avoid being home for his birthday. Ki-woo was hiding under the bed when Da-hai came into the room. She almost saw him, but instead, she just picked up her dog and didn't check under the bed. Later, when the Park couple went to their room, Ki-woo and Ki-taek quietly moved to the living room. They were looking for Ki-jung because they wanted to leave. But then, Da-song started yelling and came downstairs, so they all had to quickly hide under the table to not get caught. Da-song wanted to sleep in the garden, even with the rain, and his parents agreed, planning to watch him from the couch. During that time, the Kim family had to quietly bear hearing the Parks talk badly about them, and also dealing with them being too close for comfort. When the Parks finally fell asleep, the Kims left the house, rushing back to their own place under the heavy rain. But their neighborhood was in trouble, flooded with water from the sewers. Their home was flooded too, so they grabbed what they could and left for a gym that was sheltering people who had lost their homes. Ki-woo took a special rock with him, clinging to it as he tried to sleep, worried because his dad didn't have any plan to get them out of this mess. In a hidden room, Moon Gwang dies because of her injuries, and Gun-se tries to ask for help using Morse code with the lights, but it doesn't work out. Da-song notices but can't understand it. The next day, Mrs. Park throws a sudden party for Da-song, and the Kims have to act happy, even though they just went through a disaster with their home. Chung-suk is in charge of cooking and getting the tables ready outside. Ki-taek has to drive the parents around to pick up everything needed for the party, even though they don't like how he smells. The brother and sister have to act like they are smart teachers because they are invited to the party as special guests. At the party, Mr. Park and Ki-taek put on Indian costumes because they have a special act planned for Da-sun's cake save. Ki-woo, after hanging out with Da-hai for a bit, decides to take the scholar's rock and head to the basement. There, he gets surprised by Gonsei, who's somehow gotten free. Gonsei attacks Ki-woo with a cord and then knocks him out using the rock before heading out. Then, Gonsei grabs a knife from the kitchen and goes to the garden party, where he wants to get back for Moongwang by stabbing Ki-jung. Da-song sees him and starts having a seizure right away. Then, Da-hai finds Ki-woo and helps him by carrying him to get help. Ki-taek rushes to help his daughter, holding onto her wound to stop the bleeding. At the same time, Chung-suk fights Gonsei and ends up killing him with a barbecue skewer. One day, Mr. Park tells his driver, Mr. Ki-taek, he needs to go to the hospital with his son urgently and asks him to drive. Mr. Ki-taek, wanting to stay with his family, gets upset and throws the car keys at Mr. Park, suggesting he drive himself. The keys land on the grass, and just then Gonsei falls near them. When Mr. Park goes to pick them up, he acts rudely, making Ki-taek very angry. In his anger, Ki-taek does something terrible to Mr. Park and runs away. Weeks later, Ki-woo wakes up from a big surgery, feeling very mixed up and can't stop laughing at all the sad and crazy things happening, like losing his sister and not knowing where his dad is. He even goes through a trial but gets to go home because of everything he's been through. Despite trying to act normal, Ki-woo and his mom feel watched by detectives who think they might lead them to Mr. Ki-taek. After some time, when things quiet down, Ki-woo sneaks up to the old Park house, now owned by a new family, and discovers a secret message in lights. It's from his dad, who's been hiding in a basement, sending these light messages, hoping Ki-woo would see them someday. Ki-woo is living with his mom in their old apartment. He writes a letter to his dad. In the letter, he promises to work hard. He wants to make enough money to buy the house. His big plan is to bring his dad back home so they can be together again.